Good morning, friends. So important to know that as we mark this glorious and wonderful day on the Jewish calendar, we are also bringing our places where we are into connection with each other. Lori, sending your mother healing, really taking a moment and saying refuah shlema to her and strength to you, holding each of us as we remember, as David is his mother. And Linda, what a powerful thing it is to know that we were able to be with you as you were taking care of yourself yesterday from a mammography suite. We are all of these things. We are real, we are reflective, we are up and down. And I want to focus on what today means for the Jewish community, for the Jewish world, given the process of Jewish history, how complicated it has been, and the 74 glorious years of building our homeland back, going home, and claiming our place on earth as a people, making sure that we have strength and safety and pride, and the wherewithal to defend our people. That is no small thing. That is nothing short of miraculous. Let me connect this parsha to Yom Haatzmaut, and then share some personal thoughts, and then do a short reading. So this parsha talks about Kedusha, about holiness. After all, the name of the parsha is Kedoshim. This is all about holiness instantiated in the world, how we make the idea real. And Abraham Joshua Heschel famously said that there is nothing intrinsically holy about the land of Israel, the state of Israel, but it is the testing ground for whether or not we will be holy. It's a place for us to do what we have always said we wanted, which is to build a just society. Holiness is not ascribed, it is built, it is achieved, it is aspired to. We take all of these lofty ideals that we discover and explore and create as a Jewish community, and we have a testing ground for whether or not we really mean it in the state of Israel, what is called by many, including Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, the Third Jewish Commonwealth. This is our chance to get it right. And reflecting personally, I've been to Israel many, many times. My children, thank God, have also been to Israel many times. And I'm headed back to Israel fairly soon with a multi-faith trip of clergy from Westchester. And people ask me sometimes, why are you a Zionist? So I want to answer in a few different ways, knowing that you have your own answers. And I encourage you to think about it today. What makes you a Zionist? What does your love of Israel mean? Now, let's deal with the complicated part first. It's important to acknowledge that love isn't simple. Love is beautiful, love is rich, but love is textured. And in any loving relationship, there is work that needs to be done. Loving Israel means caring enough to push and to be frustrated. The people with whom we are most frustrated in life are often the people with whom we have loving relationships, even when that love requires healing. And so, I'd like to answer the question without explaining that I love Israel. Why am I a Zionist? Because the first time that I stepped foot in Israel, a shock went through my body, and the first time I got to Jerusalem, my heart started beating in a different way. And the first time I got to the Kotel, and I wore my talit with pride through the streets of Jerusalem, just walking as a Jew, and I lay my head on one stone, I felt the words of the very famous song true, that there are some hearts that are like stones, but there are some stones that beat with heartbeats. And I felt our ancient people's yearnings and our sadness and the destruction and the rebuilding. It's a place where I didn't need to live in translation, where my heartbeat was the beat of my people, and my people's hearts were beating in a place, and we all pray toward it. Doesn't make it easy. but it does make it connected. And what if what makes the place holy is the fact that we all lean there, we face there, we build our sanctuaries facing there? If you're where I am, you daven facing west. Daven facing east to Israel. And if you're in Israel in the north, you face south towards Jerusalem. And if you're in Jerusalem, you face toward the Kotel. And if you're at the Kotel, you face toward the Holy of Holies. And even though after the destruction we have been told that the Holy of Holies was relocated into the human heart, and even though the Kotel itself, what is understood to be the Western Wall, which is just one small part of it, is a place where men and women daven separately, which is not the way that I pray. And even though for me the Kotel is actually the southern wall, where I can lean with my wife and with my daughters and with my sons, all of that is infused with the majesty of Jewish yearning and with the pain of Jewish history. And more than that, I remember once I was just newly ordained as a rabbi, and I was part of an educational trip that took me to Haifa, and because someone on the trip knew someone, we managed to make it to a naval base in Haifa. And I'm not into guns, you might know that. And I'm not into war, you might know that. But we were granted access to a newly commissioned battleship called the Cherev, which means sword. And there were a lot of guns on this ship. And we're taken on a tour, and we went down to where the sailors sleep. And there were bunk beds in their quarters. And instantly, I was transported to times that I visited the camps in Poland. And the bunk beds where Jews were forced to stay and sleep. And the bunk beds in the ship where we serve our people. And I couldn't see, I was just crying. And stumbling, I made my way to the deck, and I climbed up the stairs, and I looked up, and there was an Israeli flag. And I knew that if I was ever in trouble, this ship would come for me. If my children, God forbid, were ever in trouble, this ship would come for me. The state of Israel's rebirth is not anything describable. It is beyond. It is a miracle. It is necessary. It is beautiful. It is complicated. It is holy. The state of Israel is not only a geopolitical development, it is a religious reality. It is a spiritual truth. Something that this Jewish heart pulses with. Last night I was blessed to be with many, many Jewish communities in Westchester in a celebration, singing a Hallel with instruments and voice and passion, with melodies of our people throughout time. And there was so much harmony. Finally, harmony. Hope. Hope for our people, and through our people's strength, hope for the world. Rabbi David Shuck, a really phenomenal teacher in our community and a dear friend, spoke from his heart about the section in Genesis where Joseph's question, after being so apart from his family, asking, Ha'od Avichai, is my father still alive? About his father Jacob, from whom he'd been separated for so long. And the answer is Od Avinu Chai. Not only is our ancestor still alive through our eyes in our heart, Od Avinu Chai. We believe that there is a connection in our people's destiny with our Creator. Hopefully every people believes that. Every people should have that. What a gift it is to see a place of blessing bloom through the miraculous work of our hearts and hands and bodies to recognize the enormous sacrifice that it continues to take for us to have a safe homeland, a haven, a place to do good work, to raise our children, to protect our people. There's so much to say, but I want to read the words of a beautiful, beautiful writer who won the Israel Prize. This is in a book that I recommend called The Zionist Ideas, edited by Gil Troy. This is by Erez Biton, who's a social worker and a poet in Israel, born in 1942. His family came from Algeria, and he talked about the Mizrahim, right? To call everyone who is of Sephardic ancestry one thing is to forget that there was enormous diversity between places of origin and the cultures and the religious identities of individuals. And in Israel, that is a very big conversation, one that surpasses our ability as Americans to talk about diversity and equity. So in the 70s, Biton protested the disrespect that Mizrahim experienced while celebrating the great heritage that Mizrahim imported with them. So he wrote some really, really powerful poems. And this one he offered in the house of the President of Israel on the subject of Jerusalem in 2016. Listen to this poem. It's called Scaffolding. On the threshold of half a house in the land of Israel, my father stood, pointing to the sides and saying, on these ruins we will build a kitchen some day, and cook Leviathan's tail and a wild bull in it. And on these ruins we will make a prayer corner to make room for some holiness. My father remained on the threshold, and I, my whole life, have been erecting scaffolding reaching up into the heart of the heavens. Listen to the rest of what he writes. This is not a poem formally, but it's poetic to be sure. The debris becomes the foundation for a new building, and to take personal responsibility, to take the concrete action, and not to remain stranded on the threshold of redemption, is not about something tangible and accessible, it's about vision. The concrete act calls us to draw near, to build scaffolding for something even grander that is thunderous and wonderful from the heart of the heavens. The state of Israel, as an independent Jewish state, is the institution that allows us to create a society based on justice and generosity, on mutual engagement. The state of Israel is the infrastructure fulfilling our commitment to perfect Israeli society, to repair our community, including each and every one of us on our own path. The state of Israel is the landmass on which we can secure the scaffolding into the heart of the heavens and make our contribution to Tikkun Olam, repairing and perfecting the world. And if we will eventually face the fact today that we are gathered in this same place, Jerusalem, nearly 3,000 years since Isaiah's prophecy committed us to act ethically, how will we react to the elderly widow kicked out of her house because she didn't meet the bank's timetable for mortgage payments? How will we cope with the suffering of the handicapped and the weak? Judaism was also the place of yearnings in the map of global yearnings that looked toward Jerusalem. And we too come to her, those of us born on the borderline between exile and rebirth, with boundless courage to take on the disposable, the exceptional, the tenuous, the miraculous. Friends, the question is, how will we love Israel? How will we see our heart beat? What will we do to strengthen each other, to champion the justice and generosity that Zionism is meant to embody? How will we defend Israel in the face of those who can't see its miraculous possibilities, the necessity of our rebirth, the legitimacy of our place on earth? There's a lot of fighting that goes into this work. But just today, how will we celebrate? How will you celebrate? What will you do to tend to the heart of our people and to just stand in awe at our rebirth? I sang yesterday with a different tone. We sang Hatikva on Yom HaZikaron, remembering the sacrifice. Let's sing Hatikva today, exulting in the reality of our homeland. Happy birthday, Israel. Yom Huledet Sameach to our people. 74 years young. Oh, the beauty we have already created, and oh, the beauty we will create. May we be blessed. May we be blessed that the beginning of the flourishing of redemption is real. Is real. Sing with me wherever you are. Kol hod balevav pnima nefesh Yehudi homia ulfatei mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia Od lo avda tikvatenu Hatikva bat shnot alpayim Liotam chofshi be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim Liot am chofshi be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Chag Sameach, friends. Happy Yom Haatzmaut. Happy Israel Independence Day. So proud to share it with you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow.